At 6:05 a.m., I walked out and saw a black steel gate welded across the brand new road I had just built to reach the highway. The chain looked thick enough to tow a ship, and the concrete around the posts was still wet. And as the first police cruiser rolled up, and the HOA president handed them a crisp deed with a polite little smile, it hit me hard that being right on paper doesn't mean a thing if you can't afford the fight. I'm Logan Hale. I left the glass towers and tidy design meetings for 14 acres outside Redford County. I called it Blackbird Acres because the birds moved in before I finished signing. And I did the boring, brave thing people say you should do when you want to live clean by the rules. I went to the county. I stood in lines. I paid $8,620 in fees. I learned which window had the right-of-way maps and which supervisor signed in blue ink. And 4 months later, I carried out a permit with a red seal that felt like armor. Access permit. AC 25-176. A straight 14-foot ribbon of crushed stone and asphalt from the shoulder of the highway to my front gate. No drama, just a road that worked when rain came and mud didn't care about your optimism. 3 days after the crew packed up, a charcoal SUV crawled along my fence like a shark, testing the current at 3:17 p.m. It turned in, and a woman's stepped out in a slate suit with a leather folio, and that smile people wear. When they planned to win by paperwork, she unrolled a yellowed map, tapped a wobbly hand-drawn line, and said, "Hale, I'm Lydia Archer, president of the Birch Heights HOA. You paved across our property. You must cease immediately. 14 days to respond." Here's a letter Meister wrote, though, and just like that, she was back in the SUV and gone. You know what I mean? The letter came from Ellison and Carr with a logo designed to make you feel poor. Cease and desist. Trespass. Attorney's fees the works. So I drove to see Julia Park, a civil attorney, whose office lives between a tire shop and a nail salon, and somehow feels like the only honest room on the block. Flipped through my binders, ran a finger down the county emails and said, "Your permit is clean." Their deed might be a story more than a fact, but confusion is their weapon document. Everything do not touch that gate. Call me first and be ready to be bored and brave at the same time. 10 days after Lydia's visit, I stepped out into a quiet that had the wrong temperature. The gate stood there like a dare. Private property, Birch Heights. HOA painted in no-nonsense letters. I photographed the wet trowel marks in the footings. I took wide shots and close shots, and GPS-tagged shots. Then I called the police. 2 officers showed up, one steady and kind, one logging every detail. They looked at my permit and nodded. "Looks legit," then the radio crackled, and the older one sighed. "Ms. Archer is on her way with paperwork. If both sides have documents, this is a civil boundary dispute, and that means we can't cut their lock judge territory." Lydia arrived on cue with a lawyer who didn't waste eye contact on me. He said herein, "And good faith and title questions." Like the words themselves did the heavy lifting. The officers wrote up an incident and told me to get my lawyer. And when everyone's taillights disappeared, I stood there with a legal road and no way to use it. And a slow burn started in my chest that felt a lot like clarity. That night, Birch Heights went on the news. Lydia, in a cream blazer, perfect lawn behind her. "We are protecting our families. A neighbor paved across property we've owned for 20 years. We asked him to stop, he refused." To aerial shots of my place, framed to look like I needed rescuing. And yeah, that happened. My phone buzzed with polite shock. and unsubscribes. So I posted a thread with the timeline and the permit and the county map labeled public non-transferable. I wrote, I followed the rules. I'm locked out, and the internet did what it does. Some folks believed others said, anyone can fake paper HOAs exist for a reason. Why can't he use the old road? Because the old road turns to soup. When the sky cries, that's why. But I didn't argue. I printed proofs for Julia, and she filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and a complaint asking for 3 plain things. Declare the corridor public order. The gate down award. Damages for lost access. The clerk stamped CV 253381, and for a second, it felt like grown-ups were in charge again. While we waited, Julia dug, and this is where the middle of my story tilts. 2 weeks before Lydia rolled up with that yellowed map, the HOA approved a sale of 12 commercial acres on their east side to Silver Key Development for $3 million. The owner, a man named Trent Caldwell, is married to Lydia's sister. And if that public corridor next to my farm gets erased into private control, the parcel's upzoning math jumps like someone added a zero resolve access issue before closing the board of minutes. Literally said that in a tidy line that made my hands go cold. You know what I mean? We pulled the dusty county archives. The 1998 right-of-way survey stamped heavy and clear. Public corridor, non-transferable. Fixed width then. The 2002 deed. Birch Heights waves around with an attached hand-drawn map, drifting their boundary roughly 48 feet into the corridor, like the line went out walking at night, and no one bothered to bring it back. Julia laid the maps side by side and said, "Paper doesn't drift on its own." 3 nights later, I got a text from an unknown number that felt like confession. I worked at the county records office. I remember that corridor. Meet me at Klein's Diner tomorrow at 2 Udra. Come alone. I sent it to Julia. She said, "You're not going alone. Single party. Consent record, everything. Do not promise anything." And the next day, a man named Warren Pike, plaid shirt and steady eyes, slid into the booth and said he had flagged the discrepancy in 2002. He was told the attorneys had cleared it. He was 6 months from retirement. He stamped it and regretted it. For years, he pushed a folder across the table of copies of the official survey. The hand-drawn drift, a note in his careful block letters, and into my phone, he said the names, the date, the small pressure. That sounds like keep the train moving, and when I walked back to the parking lot, Julia flipped through the folder and exhaled like a person who sees the spine of a case grow in real time. The county opened an administrative review. The HOA released a statement saying misinformation, defamation, all the classics. I stopped reading comments and started practicing answers. Julia ran mock questions. Late into the night, my neighbor Maya labeled exhibits in a black binder that looked like self-respect. And on the morning of the hearing, the courtroom felt smaller than TV promises. Judge Naomi Monroe took the bench with a calm that reset the room warmers and vendors on one side, Birch Heights neighbors on the other. And Julia's opening was clean and visual. This case is about lines on a map and which ones get to matter. She projected the 1998 survey next to the 2002 hand-drawn drift. The gap was visible, even from the cheap seats. Paper doesn't drift on its own. She said again, then she called Warren, who told the truth without theater. I objected in 2002. I was told to stamp it. I stamped it. I'm here. Because I should have fought harder then. And I can fight now. Ellison cross-examined with retirement dates and minor reprimands, and Warren just said, Some mistakes stick. You don't misremember the thing that keeps you up at night. I took the stand and kept it factual. The fees, the drainage plan, the permit. The morning I found the gate and felt like someone had put a lock on my throat. I said, I didn't cut it because I like my fights to happen in daylight. Ellison tried small traps. You did not notify the HOA before paving, correct. Correct, because the county told me the land was public. You do not ask your neighbor permission to use a sidewalk. The city poured, you posted online and invited pressure. I posted facts. If the truth felt like pressure, that's between your client and a mirror. And then Julia tied motive to minutes and money. The sale to Silver Key. The family tie the board. Note, to resolve access. Before closing the gate, appearing in the dark, objections overruled short closings. A gavel, the judge took it under advisement, and 6 days later. My phone buzzed while I was staking tomatoes, Julia said. We won, the order is clean, the corridor is, and always has been public. The 2002 map is defective and cannot expand title. Your permit stands. The gate comes down within 7 days. Damages for lost access referral to the county prosecutor for potential fraud. And I sat on a crate and breathed like a person who remembers how. The crew arrived with a flatbed and a post puller. They cut the chain first, and it made a sound. I will always carry a metal lie. Giving up, they wrestled the posts free, lifted the frame, and I stood at the shoulder. Not triumphant or vengeful, just present. Lydia showed up without a camera crew. A bailiff handed her the order. Her face went still. She turned and left. While the gate hung in the air and the straps creaked. And if this were a movie, we would roll credits right there. But life likes a messy coda. The news ran the ruling. The comments came like weather. Some cheered, some said, this is why HOAs get a bad name. Some said, I should have used the old road and minded my business, a few. Said the quiet part, that neighborhoods were built to keep people like me inconvenient. And I thought about Warren, 6 months from retirement, stamping a thing he knew was wrong because he was tired. And I wondered how many gates are standing right now because someone trusted the slow system alone, or because they didn't have a neighbor who knew how to label exhibits, or because no one with a folder slid into their booth at Klein's. You know what I mean. I drove the road that afternoon, same hum. Under the tires, same wide sky. And justice didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like a clatter, and then quiet, like space to breathe, like a straight line home. Tell me what you think in the comments. Was I right to go public, or did that tilt? The field, have you seen an HOA or any board? Use paperwork like a weapon. Where do you draw the line between protecting a neighborhood and strangling a neighbor? Drop your city. Your story, and whether you think the rules protect everyone, or just the folks who can afford to make them louder.